Yeah, so basically what we planning to do is we plan to cover the two-sector model completely. We look at investment, okay, determinants, okay, all the factors that affect investment, and we also think about something else which is called the accelerator multiplier interaction. Okay, so these are the things that we will do. I'm going to do a little recap also so that we get a sense of what we've done so far. ठीक है बच्चों? So these are the things that we were going to go about. Let's start with the class. Um, so do unmute yourself if you ever want to sort of ask me a question. But let's start. So we are now looking at AE is equal to C plus I, right? So we looked at consumption plus investment. So AE is equal to C plus I, where C हमने बोला था is A plus BY, or C is equal to 100 plus 0.8Y. We came up with it. We also came up with saving was minus 100 plus 0.2Y. We also came up with investment to be 250. And we said that investment right now is autonomous, which means completely independent of income. So we came up with this kind of a discussion. We said this that when you look at investment, investment can change when, for example, um if you want to change investment may change in an independent manner, irrespective of income. In other words, investment is what we call autonomous. Okay, autonomous means not dependent on income. So, for example, if this is 250, if I want to increase investment, it will look like this: investment going up for all level of income. So, for example, if your GDP was Y naught or Y1, if we want to increase investment, it will go up for all level of income. It's not going to be like a function of Y, it's independent of Y. At least in the Keynesian model, this is how it looks like, that investment is completely independent or autonomous, right? Then we talked about the idea that if you look at the equilibrium, so now the new equilibrium will be A is equal to C plus I. If I put C here and if I put I here, so my AE will become 100 plus 0.8Y plus 250, or AE will become 350 plus 0.8Y, right? If AE becomes 350 plus 0.8Y, and if I put now Y in this equilibrium, because AE is equal to Y at equilibrium, so if I put this AE here, my Y will become 350 plus 0.8Y, 350 plus 0.8Y, or if I can rearrange this, this becomes 0.2Y is equal to 350, or Y is equal to 350 over 0.2, right? Which is going to be 1750. So our equilibrium was happening to be 1750, if you guys remember from last time. But from the diagram perspective, if you see the withdrawals and injection function, we were looking at the idea that if this is your Y, this is AE, this is W comma J. So AE is equal to Y. This was my AE. My AE was like this. My AE was equal to 1750. You see 1750 pay on the same 1750, my withdrawals, which was my saving function, which was minus 100 plus 0.2y, was equal to my injections, which was equal to 250. So equilibrium was taking place here. Now, guys, this is important to understand that wherever in equilibrium, we said two things happen. A, Y must equal to AE. So we got this as Y equals to AE, and W must equal to J. The answer must be the same. Okay. So this should lead to the same answer from our discussion. Number one. Number two, we also said this, that previously when your AE was 100 plus 0.8y, right? When your AE was 100 plus 0.8y, our equilibrium was happening at 500. Okay. So at 500, this was the 500 point where AE was 100 plus 0.8y, and now it became 350 plus 0.8y. So I said this case, you can see that investment went up by 100. So this is your change in I was 100. I'm sorry, the change in I was 250, but this change in I of 250 was causing change in Y, was causing a change in Y of 1250. Are you all with me? So change in I is equal to 250, while change in Y equal to 1250. Right? So what is happening here is this, uh, that you are looking at the GDP to actually rise by more than the change in investment, right? So if you look at this, you are looking at a situation where change in I of 250 is leading to a change in Y of 1250. And I said this, that this is something called the multiplier effect, something which we're going to learn about in a little while, that whenever there is a change in Y. In fact, I said this, that the multiplier, if you want to find out the size of multiplier, the multiplier will be change in Y over change in I, or 1250 over 250, or it's going to be simply 5. So my multiplier is 5. So why is my multiplier 5? That's the first thing we want to understand today. Secondly, what are the factors that can change this multiplier? We will talk about that too. And then we talk about the general factors that affect investment. Okay. Is there any question before because so far what we've done is just a recap of what we've learned so far in the classes that we've done. Nothing new. Anything you guys want to know? Anything that you want to ask before we move on to the multiplier? No? Are we going to move on? Sorry, there are people who are asking questions. Multiplier is 5. No, sir. W is equal to J again. Yes. Sorry, I just saw your question. So, yeah. Okay, let's start. So, guys, so hota kya hai? We go back to now our circular flow. There is household and then there is firm, right? We said household is given from what we call factors of production. Firm is giving household what we call, using these factors of production, they're giving them output. And this output results in firm to get from the household what we call expenditure. And this expenditure ultimately will result in the household to give firm to give household what we call income. Okay, so income is Y. Now, this is where the story starts. So if there is a two-sector model, okay, guys, if there's a two-sector model where there is, should we write this? Not really, but I'll tell you what to write. करार जो मैं बताऊं बाद में, लेकिन जो अगर आप लिखना चाहते हो लिख भी सकते हो, अगर मैं बहुत तेज लिख रहा हूं तो रोक भी सकते हो मुझे. So guys, what happens is basically कि आपने आपकी जो income जब आपके household को मिलती है यहाँ पर, when the household gets this income, now in a two-sector model, there is one withdrawal which is what you call saving, but there is one injection which is called investment. Now होता क्या है कि let's say household को मिली $100 की income, okay? इसमें से हाउसहोल्ड ने किया क्या? हाउसहोल्ड ने किया ये, अगर उनकी सेविंग को देखें तो उनका एमपीएस था 0.2, राइट? इसका मतलब है इफ यू गिव देम $100 ऑफ इनकम, if this $100 of income goes to household, 0.2 or $20 is saved. Are you all with me? So $20 will be saved, which will mean that in this case, what we're looking at is the case where the household, when they got this $100, they saved $20. But that would also mean if they save $20, they would right now spend $80. So पहले हुआ ये कि पहले हाउस होल्ड ने $100 का खर्चा किया, ठीक है। उसके बाद वो $100 जो है इनकम की फॉर्म में उनको मिले 80, जिसमें से उन्होंने 20 बचाए। उसका मतलब हुआ कि अब जो है इनकम बन गई 80। इस इनकम ऑफ 80 is going to now again go through a round in the economy of 80 का 0.2 बनता है 16, and then this would mean the next time if I subtract 80 and 16 I get 64 key expenditure. So what I'm trying to say is this, that in a circular flow the money just keeps on circling around. आपने मुझे दिए $100 फॉर एग्जाम्पल कि सर अली ये आपकी ट्यूशन फी है या आपने जो हमें क्लास पढ़ाई, मैंने उस $100 में से 20 बचाए और मैंने 80 खर्च कर दिए अपने बेटे के स्कूल पे। उस 80 के 20% जो है वो किसी और ने बचाए और उसने बाकी खर्च कर दिए। वही पैसा इकोनॉमी में कीप्स ऑन सर्कुलेटिंग। सो अगर मैं ये जो एक्सपेंडिचर है 100 प्लस 80 प्लस 64 प्लस 64 का 20% होता है और 80% होता है 51.2 करता रहूंगा, if I keep on the same $100 will translate into the GDP of 100 times 5 or $500. Or in other words, the multiplier of that 100 is going to be 500 because my value of multiplier is actually 5. How did I get this value of 5? Because I know the formula that multiplier is equal to 1 over your withdrawal, which is right now MPS. So 1 over 0.2, 0.2 is being withdrawn and that will make it 5. So क्या हो रहा है कि आपका पहला $100 खर्चा किया किसी ने, वो $100 इनकम बन गई। जब वो $100 इनकम बनेगी तो 20 बंदा सेव करेगा और फिर वो 20 के बाद वो 80 वापस खर्च कर देगा। 80 खर्च करेगा, उसका 20% 16 बचेगा। तो एमपीएस जो है ना वो करता क्या है कि हर बारी में 20% जो है ना वो निकाला जा रहा है, वापस विड्रॉ किया जा रहा है। So 20% is being withdrawn from the economy every time. Now, guys, this would mean if, for example, change in I was 250 and your multiplier we just found out is equal to 1 over MPS of 5 or 1 over 0.2, which is equal to 5, right? Then your change in Y will be 250 times 5 or 1250. And I have the formula that I'm using here is that change in Y is equal to change in I or change in any AE, जो कि यहाँ पे 250 थी, times multiplier. I want to explain this concept एक और बात, बड़ा important point to understand है कि अगर let's say मैं बोलूं कि multiplier, what is the value of multiplier if MPS is 0? Anyone can tell me what is the value of multiplier if MPS is 0? Anyone can tell me that? If I say MPS infinite, शाबाश, because अगर एक लॉजिक चेक करें आप लोग, बच्चा लुक एट द लॉजिक। अगर मेरा MPS 0 है, इसका मतलब है अगर $100 आप भेजोगे, गाइस लुक एट दिस, $100 अगर आप भेजोगे, $100 जाएंगे, $100 आएंगे, $100 जाएंगे, $100 आएंगे, $100 जाएंगे, $100 आएंगे, $100 जो है ना इकोनॉमी में घूमते रहेंगे। और बिकॉज एमपीएस 0 है यानी कि कोई भी विड्रॉल नहीं हो रही, तो कितनी जीडीपी होगा? चेंज इन 1 ओवर एमपीएस होगा, 1 ओवर एमपीएस 1 ओवर 0 इज इक्वल टू इन्फिनिट, यानी जीडीपी विल गो अप बाय 100%। सिमिलरली अगर मैं बोलूं आपका एमपीएस है 1, if your MPS is 1, what is your change in Y? आप बोलोगे अगर MPS 1 है तो 1 over 1 is 0, right? 1 over 1 is 0, यानी कि मल्टीप्लायर की वैल्यू आएगी multiplier will be equal to 1 or change in y will only be 100. Why होगा ये कि अगर आपका एमपीएस 1 होगा तो आपने इनकम दी 100 की, 100 के 100 बचा लिए किसी बंदे ने. Does that make sense? So MPS is actually inversely related to multiplier. The higher the MPS, let me write this, the higher the MPS, the smaller the multiplier. Why? Because MPS actually क्या कह रहे हो बच्चा, आवाज कट रही है, कम अगेन. Sorry, what are you saying? Say it again.
मैं कह रहा हूँ कि ये मल्टीप्लाई की इंपॉर्टेंस क्या है.
इंपॉर्टेंस ये है कि ये बताता है कि इकोनॉमी में अगर आप फॉर एग्जाम्पल जब कभी भी खर्चा करते हो तो इकोनॉमी में किस तरह जीडीपी आपका ग्रो करता है. सो फॉर एग्जाम्पल अगर गवर्नमेंट ने बोला कि यार इकोनॉमी का जीडीपी ग्रो करना है, ठीक है, तो क्या करेगा गवर्नमेंट, बोलेगा यार 250 बिलियन डॉलर खर्च करते हैं. ओके, अगर 250 बिलियन डॉलर खर्च करेंगे तो उसके बाद क्या होगा, उसका असर ये आएगा कि 250 बिलियन टाइम्स अगर मल्टीप्लाई 5 होगा तो जीडीपी 5 टाइम 250 यानी 1250 बिलियन डॉलर से बढ़ जाएगा. ये इसकी इंपॉर्टेंस है. अगर हमें मल्टीप्लायर पता होगा तो हमें पता चलेगा कि कितना हम एई को खर्चा करेंगे तो जीडीपी बढ़ेगा. अल्टीमेट गोल अगर आपको जीडीपी बढ़ाना है तो मल्टीप्लायर बताएगा कि कितने से आपको अपना सी आई या जी या एक्स माइनस एम को खर्च करोगे तो जिसकी वजह से जीडीपी बढ़ेगा. राइट, सो सो मल्टीप्लायर, let me write down this, actually this is a good point to ask. Multiplier tells us the extent to which GDP rises to a rise in AE. Remember AE क्या होता है? AE फुल फॉर्म में तो C प्लस आई प्लस जी प्लस एक्स माइनस एम होता है, बट AE मीन्स एग्रीगेट एक्सपेंडिचर. सो जब आपका AE चेंज होता है, चेंज इन AE टाइम्स multiplier is your change in Y. And this change in AE can be 100 or 200 or 300. Aggregate expenditure, this can be 200, 300, 400, whatever the change in AE is, times your change in Y. Multiplier, और multiplier का formula क्या होता है? Multiplier is equal to change in Y over change in AE, also equal to 1 over MP. I'm going to write a general form, MPW, 1 over MPW. और MPW का मतलब क्या होता है? Marginal propensity to withdraw. Okay, so अगर आप देखो, what's your marginal propensity to withdraw? In your two sector model is 1 over MPS, जो कि होता है 1 over 0.2, which is equal to right now 5. So can you copy this, the one that I just wrote, this text in orange? Can you just copy this? Because this is important. Yeah, and please let me know if there is any question. Do we agree, guys? Does that make sense? Done? Okay. Now, guys, somebody copy कर दिया? Is everyone done copying this? Are we done copying this? Okay, awesome. So guys, we looked at how the AE change causing a change in Y. We looked at how this is going to be multiplier. We just talked about multiplier. We know what multiplier is now. Now let's look at determinants of investment. This is a really, can you go over the equation again? I can go over the equation. ISA or MPS. So yes, so guys, so couple of things. Number one, change in AE times multiplier change in Y. तो हमने ये जो निकाला था, ये दो तरीके से मैंने निकाला है. ये ये आपका था Y, ये आपका AE था, राइट. से AE नॉट से AE 1 हुआ, राइट. ये जो डिस्टेंस है वो था चेंज इन Y, राइट. और ये डिस्टेंस था चेंज इन AE. तो मैंने बोला था अगर ये आपका 1750, ये अगर आपका 1250 था, ये अगर आपका चेंज इन AE था 250, तो हमने बोला दो तरीके से मल्टीप्लाई निकाल सकते हैं. या तो आप बोल सकते हो 1250 ओवर 250 विच इज इक्वल टू 5. और सिंपली अगर आपको पता हो कि एमपीएस क्या है, तो वाई इज एमपीएस एंड एमपीडब्ल्यू द सेम, बिकॉज अभी सिर्फ एक ही विड्रॉल हो रही है. अभी विड्रॉल सिंपली सेविंग है, लेकिन कुछ अर्से बाद 2 सेक्टर के बाद जब हम 3 सेक्टर में जाएंगे तो टैक्सेस भी आ जाएंगे और इंपोर्ट्स भी आ जाएंगे. दैट्स व्हाई मैंने एमपीडब्ल्यू लिखा है, यहाँ पे जनरल फॉर्म लिखी है. ओके, बट वैसे ये फॉर्मूला याद रखें 1/MPW. अभी क्योंकि सिर्फ एक ही विड्रॉल हो रही है, वो सेविंग हो रही है, दैट्स व्हाई इट्स एमपीएस. ओके, सो आयसा, डिड आई आंसर योर क्वेश्चन देन? Okay, awesome. So anyone else? Somebody else was saying, somebody was saying to make me a. I'm sorry, I just lost somebody's chat. Are we good, guys? समझ आ गया बच्चों? Are we good to move on? Is there anyone else who has a question? Please ask again, because. Okay, awesome. Are we good to move on? Let's move on. So, guys, what are the determinants of investment? So, this is a very important, and I really want to say, bar. This is something which can come on our exam. So, please, determinants of investment, बहुत popular सवाल है, बहुत ज़रूरी सवाल है. What are the factors or determinants of investment? The first determinant of investment we want to talk about is simply interest rates. So guys, what are interest rates? So interest rates are basically what we call our cost of borrowing. Isme, I want to explain the theory called the marginal efficiency of capital theory. What is the marginal efficiency of capital theory? The marginal efficiency of capital theory simply says this, that, if you want to look at projects, let's say I have projects 1, 2, 3, and 4. Okay, I have 4 projects. For example, let's say these projects have an initial investment of $100. Okay, let's also assume that the return from these projects is $120 from this one, $115 from this one, $110 from this one, and $105 from this one. So you can see that all of these projects have some return. Now, if I ask you guys what's the rate of return, the rate of return from these projects will be, for example, 20% from this one, 15% from this one, 10% from this one, 5% from this one. Now, which project would you invest? And the answer is that maybe all, maybe none, maybe 3. It all depends on what's my interest rates. If my interest rate is equal to, for example, 15%, then I would say this, if interest rate is 15%, then I can borrow money at 15% and invest in the first project, and 20% is my rate of return minus 15% interest rates, I will get a return of 5%. So will I invest in the first project? And the answer is yes, because 20%, which is the rate of return, is greater than the cost of borrowing, which is 15%. In fact, if I'm looking at economic costs, even the second project, which is where I am actually, making a normal profit, I will also put money in the second project, because at least I am, breaking even, or I am making a normal profit. In fact, if the interest rate falls to 5%, right, then I may actually end up, even if the interest rate goes to 5%, even putting money in the third and the fourth project. Why? Because all the projects will become what we call financially viable. So what I'm trying to say is that when the interest rate is your opportunity cost of investment, and we say this, that interest rates, when they fall, are for interest rate. Interest rate, when it goes down, then the rate of return for these projects, which is like 20, 15, and 10, lower the interest rate, more projects will become financially viable, right? More projects will become financially viable, and that in turn, guys, will result in investment to go up. Because if the interest rate, look at this, guys, if the interest rate is like 15%, then I will invest 100 plus 100, $200. But if the interest rate goes all the way to like 5%, right, then all the four projects will become financially viable. Okay. Now, one of the questions people always ask is that, sir, why are you even saying second project will become financially viable when you make a 0% profit? Remember, this is normal profit. In economics, 0% profit or normal profit is acceptable. Okay. So number one is that. Number two, जब आपके पास इंटरेस्ट रेट, अगर मार्केट के इंटरेस्ट रेट अगर 5% हो जाएगा, तो आप वो वाले प्रोजेक्ट्स जो कि बहुत कम रिटर्न दे रहे हैं, आप उन पे भी लगाओगे. Got it? So for us, this rate of return is called marginal efficiency of capital, MEC. The marginal efficiency of capital is the rate of return on a project. And we say this, we compare the marginal efficiency of capital with the interest rate. If the marginal efficiency of capital is greater than or equal to the interest rate, we will invest in a project. Got it, guys? Does that make sense? So if I draw this in terms of a diagram, we can actually draw the diagram for this one, and we can say this, that if on my y-axis I have interest rates, on my x-axis I have your GDP, then what happens is this, that, I'm sorry, not GDP, your investment or planned investment. Plan means agle saal ki investment. Then the way it will look like will be something like this. The demand for investment will look like this. This is what we call the demand for investment, where when the interest rates are like, for example, 20%, you will put money in only one project. But if the interest rate goes to, let's say, 5%, right? If interest rates fall from R0 to R1, you may invest in all the four projects. Do we get the idea, guys? So here, what we're saying is this, that lower the interest rates, higher the investment. That's what we call a movement along the curve. because the cost of borrowing, when it goes down, you will probably invest in more projects. More projects will become financially viable, and that's why investment goes up. Do we get this idea, guys? Do we get the concept before we move on to the other factors? Anyone else? But when the return also decreases as interest rate goes down. Why is the interest rates return on a project is independent? Let's say, for example, Cedar एक project है, Cedar ने नया campus खोला, उसका rate of return तो which will depend upon it will depend upon the project कि बच्चे कितने आए वगैरह वगैरह वगैरह. लेकिन क्या आप उसमें इन्वेस्ट करोगे नहीं करोगे वो डिपेंड करेगा इंटरेस्ट रेट पे. तो हम ये कहते हैं कि why the curve is labeled D, because this is demand for investment. That's why it's labeled D. ओके ओके भाई साहब. सो प्रोजेक्ट के अपने रिटर्न है, लेकिन क्या वो रिटर्न, ये प्रोजेक्ट के जो अपने रिटर्न है वो तो 5% है ना. इस प्रोजेक्ट के रिटर्न है 5%. वो उसके अपना, जैसे अगर ये मैंने मशीनरी खरीदी $100 की, वो 105 आपको साल के एंड पे देगी. लेकिन क्या आपने पैसे लगाने डिपेंड ऑन इंटरेस्ट रेट. अगर इंटरेस्ट रेट 5% है या 4% है, इससे कम है, तो ये प्रोजेक्ट अच्छा लगेगा आपको. लेकिन अगर इंटरेस्ट रेट अगर 15% पे, तो आप बोलोगे यार ये प्रोजेक्ट पे लगाने से अच्छा है बैंक पे रख दो. Right? You would rather put the money in the bank and not put money here. Make sense? Are we good? Any questions before we move on? So interest rates, guys, is the movement along the curve. But what about the shift of the curve? Okay. The shift of the curve can happen because of many reasons as well. Shift of the demand for investment. One such factor is number 2. Let's write that out now, because the determinant में पहला determinant हमने बोला interest rate, which is movement along the curve. The second determinant is basically your cost of capital goods. If the cost of capital goods go down, okay, look at this table, guys. अभी cost of capital है 100. अगर ये cost of capital 100 के बजाय, अगर this cost of capital 100 के बजाय अगर ये हो जाती, for example, 80, okay, if this was 80, then what will happen? Just a minute, guys. There's a little lag in my. Just realized there's a lag in my laptop screen, and this should not happen. Anyways, can you see the screen? Let me try to reshare my screen quickly, because this should not be happening. They are on the same internet. Yeah, sorry. Can you see this? Okay, so guys, अगर आपकी initial investment 80 है, okay, if your initial investment was 80 and the rate return was still 120, so 120 minus 80 would mean your rate of return will become actually 40%. Isn't that true? So what I'm trying to say is this, that when your initial investment or cost of capital goods go down, okay, a fall in the cost of capital goods will lead to a rise in the rate of return for all levels of interest rates. So what I'm trying to say is this, that ये जो आपका प्रोजेक्ट था, जो पहले आपको लाइक 120 रिटर्न दे रहा था, वो सडनली आपको 120 तो रिटर्न होगा, लेकिन रेट ऑफ रिटर्न होगा 120 माइनस 80 यानी 40, यानी कि 40 भी नहीं बल्कि एक्चुअली इज गोइंग टू बी लाइक 40 डिवाइडेड बाय 80, 50% रिटर्न हो गया, right? Because 120 minus 80 is 40, 40 over 80 is 50% return. So suddenly, the lower the initial investment, यानी जितनी सस्ती आपकी initial investment होगी, और same machine can give you more return because the return is still 120, but the money that you put was only 80. So the lower the cost of capital goods, the higher will be the rate of return, which would mean the way I will see is that पहले अगर आप 20% पे 100 लगाते थे, अब आप 20% पे, if this was the demand for investment, you will probably be investing more because more projects will become financially viable. So your demand for investment will shift out because your interest rates are the same, but the rate of return has gone up because the cost of capital goods has gone down. So lower the cost of capital goods, higher will be the investment for all level of interest rates. Why? Because suddenly your rate of return will go up because the initial investment has gone down. Do we get it? Does that make sense? Ishal, do we get it now? I think you asked me at 1:06. It's 3 minutes into it. Sorry, Ishal, which part is this? Same part? Are we good? Are we good to move on? Okay, so guys, look at this. दो तीन चीजें जो कि यहां पे मैंने बोला कि अगर इनिशियल इन्वेस्टमेंट अगर 80 हो जाएगी, right, with the same return, you can see with the same return, 80 investment, the same return, the rate of return will no longer be the same. For example, 115 minus 80, it's going to be higher. 1110 minus 80 will be higher. 105 minus 80 will be higher. So the larger the investment, the smaller the investment amount, the rate of return will go up. Second thing, the second factor which makes the demand for investment to shift to the right, number 3, will be the productivity of capital. If the productivity of capital goes up, okay, if the productivity of capital rises, let me write this first, पहले फिर उसके बाद हम लोग टेबल पे देखेंगे. If the productivity of capital rises, it will result in higher investment as the return rises from the investment. What do you mean by this, guys? Why would the return rises from the investment? So I'm going to go back to the table. I'm going to show you this quickly. कि अगर आपका प्रोडक्टिव लेबर ज्यादा प्रोडक्टिव हो जाए, ओके, इमेजिन राइट नाउ कि ये आपका वही 100 है, ओके, बट अगर ये 120 के बजाय ये रिटर्न हो जाए 140, ओके, या 150. Let me write this 150 because I want to give the same value as 50%. What if your return goes to 150? Because your machinery becomes more capital, more productive. If your capital becomes more productive, and this goes from 100 rather than 100 to 120, but 150. इसका मतलब क्या हुआ? If the productivity of capital goes up, then the return from investment will go up. And if the return from investment go up, then the rate of return will also go up. So now, if the capital becomes more productive, then it will result in higher investment as the return rises from the investment, causing the rate of return to rise. And this rise in rate of return, guys, actually will result in, if you look at this demand for investment, for all level of investment, you will invest more because you'll be like, if the interest rate was R naught, you were investing I naught, you will probably invest more because you will realize that the projects are giving you better return. So what's the difference between the first one and the second one? The first one कहता है कि आपकी कॉस्ट ऑफ कैपिटल गुड्स अगर कम होंगी तो मशीनरी सस्ती होगी तो रेट ऑफ रिटर्न बढ़ जाएगा. ये कहता है कि सेम कॉस्ट ऑफ कैपिटल है लेकिन आपकी मशीनरी आपको बेहतर रिटर्न दे रही है. So higher productivity of capital or cheaper cost of capital goods, both ultimately will cause the demand for investment to go up. You will want to invest more for all level of interest rates. Does that make sense? Are we good? Do we get the idea? People, questions? Awesome.
1 minute, sir. Let us copy the graph.
The third point, yes, Yusra, sorry. The third point is basically if productivity of capital goes up. So what do we mean by this? So for example, अगर आपका पहले initial investment थी $100 और आपका रिटर्न था 120, राइट? तो आपका रेट ऑफ रिटर्न था या मार्जिनल एफिशिएंसी ऑफ कैपिटल थी 20%. मैं कह रहा हूं अगर आपकी प्रोडक्टिविटी ऑफ कैपिटल बढ़ेगी तो 120 के बजाय आपको 150 मिल गया. इसका मतलब है आपका रेट ऑफ रिटर्न 50% हो गया, विच वुड मीन अब अगर 20% इंटरेस्ट रेट्स हैं अगर आपके, तो आप उस पर ज्यादा इन्वेस्ट करोगे बिकॉज मोर प्रोजेक्ट्स विल बिकम फाइनेंशियली वायबल. जितना ज्यादा आपका रेट ऑफ रिटर्न होगा उतना ज्यादा आपकी इन्वेस्टमेंट होगी. रेट ऑफ रिटर्न is actually dependent on rate of return is actually dependent on the cost of capital goods, and number two, the productivity of capital. Okay, so both the factors would matter. Are we good? Does that make sense? The last point, number 4, is simply Yusra, are we good with this? Guys, can you hear me properly? Okay, Yusra, awesome. The fourth one is what we call simply, like business confidence. If the business confidence go up, then investment will go up. Why? Because higher business confidence, higher business confidence will mean people are going to be optimistic about the future, and that would mean they will invest more. Make sense? Something's gone wrong. Can you guys hear me properly? We can hear you. Okay, you can hear me. Can you guys see this screen? Is there something wrong with my screen sharing part? Where there is a lag happening. So copy this, guys, that the screen is just lagging, right? So when investment go up, there will be higher business confidence, and this higher business confidence will lead to uh, lag in screen. Voice is fine. Okay, chalo, shukar hai, voice is fine. So investment go up, there will be higher business confidence, and this higher business confidence will lead to this higher business confidence will lead to basically more investment, and therefore demand for investment will go up. Okay, so these are the four factors that we need to remember. So, what are the determinants of investment? Well, first one is interest rate, second one is cost of capital goods, third one is productivity of capital, and fourth one is business confidence. When people are optimistic about future, they will want to invest more. Got it? Does that make sense? Are we good? Any questions? Okay, awesome. Now, guys, we've done with this. I want to talk about one more concept, which is, like paradox of thrift and investment and accelerator theory, which is the two things which are left. I I can, honestly speaking, can do one more concept, and I can leave the next one for the class tomorrow. So let's just try to do this idea, which is paradox of thrift, and then we can end today's class. So let's just try to get this concept out. So what is paradox of thrift? Paradox of thrift is this idea which says this, that if people save, then this money can result in funds for investment. Okay, so if people save, they will save in a bank. This money can basically, yes.
सर ये फ्यूचर से रिलेटेड होगा ना फिर तो?
हाँ, कि भाई आपने आपने सेव किया, लेकिन आपने बैंक में रखा, होपफुली वो जो पैसा आपने बैंक में रखा, ये लोगों को मिलेगा, किसी और को मिल जाएगा इन्वेस्टमेंट के तौर पर। बेसिकली हम ये कह रहे हैं कि अगर पीपल सेव करेंगे तो अच्छी बात है, बिकॉज दिस मनी कैन रिजल्ट इन फंड्स फॉर इन्वेस्टमेंट। सवाल ये है कि व्हाट इफ everyone saves? Okay, why is that going to be bad? This is the idea that we want to talk about, because paradox का मतलब होता है contradiction, shift का मतलब होता है save. So what's the contradiction? What's the bad part about saving? Because अगर everyone starts to save, like Japan की economy में exactly आयान, अगर everyone starts to save, if the saving go up, फिर consumption गिर जाएगी, because saving and consumption are automatically linked. और अगर consumption गिरेगी, तो remember AE के फॉर्मूला क्या होता है? AE is equal to C plus I. अभी फिलहाल हमारा C plus I है. अगर AE C गिरेगा तो AE गिरेगा, राइट? अगर समझो आपने 100 से सेविंग बढ़ाई तो कंजम्पशन 100 से गिर गई, राइट? अगर कंजम्पशन 100 से गिरा तो AE 100 से गिर गया, और अगर 100 से AE गिरा, एंड इफ, लेट मी राइट दिस गाइस, if the multiplier is 5, then change in AE times your multiplier is your change in y. So अगर आपने 100 से अगर आपकी गिरी sort of income, so multiply अगर 5 हुआ तो GDP आपका गिर गया 500 से। इसका मतलब क्या हुआ कि Talha, are you asking me about which part are you asking me about, Talha? What I'm saying is this, कि there is a paradox or contradiction of saving. We think saving is good, but saving may not be good, because if everyone decides to save, then nobody will spend. And if nobody is spending, then we will end up having a society where the whole society will be pushing the economy towards a recession. So for example, अगर आपने 100 से कंजम्पशन को गिराई तो जीडीपी आपका 500 से गिर जाएगा. एंड द पैराडॉक्स का मतलब होता है कि कॉन्ट्रडिक्शन, क्योंकि हम कहते हैं कि सेविंग अच्छी बात है, सबको सेव करना चाहिए, लेकिन अगर सब सेव करना शुरू करेंगे तो इकोनॉमी कैन एक्चुअली गेट इनटू अ जोन ऑफ रिसेशन. बिकॉज यहाँ पे आपने एक 100 गिराया, राइट, ये आपका ए ही था, आपने कहा सेविंग बढ़ाओ, सेविंग बढ़ी लेकिन कंजम्पशन गिर गई. जब कंजम्पशन गिरेगी तो उसकी वजह से जीडीपी गिर गया 500 से. ये अगर अगर वाई नॉट था तो ये वाई वन हो गया, तो जीडीपी गिर गया. मेक सेंस? लेकिन ये कहानी यहाँ पे खत्म नहीं होगी. जब आपकी कंजम्पशन गिरेगी जिसकी वजह से जीडीपी गिरेगा तो फर्म्स बोलेंगी, लेट मी राइट दिस, फर्म्स विल रिएक्ट by investing less. एंड देन नेक्स्ट राउंड में क्या होगा कि इन्वेस्टमेंट भी गिर जाएगी. और अगर इन्वेस्टमेंट गिरी बिकॉज फर्म्स आर नाउ पेसिमिस्टिक अबाउट फ्यूचर, तो यहाँ पे एक और ए गिर गया जिसकी वजह से मजीद जीडीपी गिर गया, जिसकी वजह से क्योंकि इन्वेस्टमेंट गिर गई. व्हाई वुड इन्वेस्टमेंट गो डाउन? बिकॉज फर्म्स विल बी लाइक यार लोग खर्च नहीं कर रहे, लोग सेव कर रहे हैं. सो इन अ वे व्हाट आई एम ट्राइंग टू से इज दिस, दैट इकोनॉमी is sliding into a recession. So what I'm trying to say is that it is exactly, it's a chain reaction. पहले कंजम्पशन गिरी, लोगों ने सेव करना शुरू, कंजम्पशन गिरा दी, जिसका असर क्या हुआ, जीडीपी 100 से कंजम्पशन गिराई लेकिन 500 से जीडीपी गिर गया बिकॉज ऑफ मल्टीप्लायर. फिर उसके बाद आपने इन्वेस्टमेंट गिराई आपने, क्योंकि फर्म्स कह रही है जीडीपी गिर रहा है, लोग खर्च नहीं कर रहे, लेट्स कट डाउन इन्वेस्टमेंट गिरी 100 से, मजीद जीडीपी 500 से गिर गया. इसका मतलब है पहले 500 ये हुआ, फिर 500 ये हुआ, और इकोनॉमी 1000 से गिर गई. सिर्फ 200 चेंज हुआ एई, लेकिन उसकी वजह से एक चेन रिएक्शन हुआ कि जीडीपी 500 से गिर गया. सो देयर इज अ पैराडॉक्स और कॉन्ट्रडिक्शन ऑफ सेविंग, व्हिच इज दैट इफ एवरीवन डिसाइड्स टू सेव, then it is bad for economy. We do not want people to save. We want people to spend, because जितनी spending होगी उतना जीडीपी बढ़ेगा और उतनी इकोनॉमी में बूम आएगा. जहां लोग सेव करना शुरू करेंगे वहां इकोनॉमी एक्चुअली सफर करेगी. That's why the more the expenditure, the more the GDP, and the more economy will be good. So we say there is a contradiction or paradox of saving, because if people decide to save and people are not going to spend, then they will cause, number one, consumption to fall, and number two, in the same cycle, investment to fall. Does that make sense, guys? And that is what we call the paradox of thrift, which where we say that saving can be actually undesirable or bad because it can end up causing a recession to happen. Are we good? Does that make sense? Did we get the idea? Questions, guys? Do we get this idea? Understood? Awesome. That is it for today. This is the end of our class. We did this page number 30. I want you guys to read this. The diagram has two parts. Ye wala part, ignore this part of the diagram. Just focus on the top part. Just focus on the top part, which is the one that I did draw. कि पहले कंजम्पशन करी फिर इन्वेस्टमेंट करी जिसकी वजह से जीडीपी कर रहा है. That's what it is. Okay? Does that make sense? अभी तो 5 आउट थे, तुमने मैच ही खत्म करा दिया मेरे बच्चे. Thank you very much, guys. I will go. Take care. Bye bye. Khuda Hafiz.